I'm going to give you the Chicago Bears' three biggest decisions they have to make with this current roster moving forward into free agency, and it starts right now. Now, if you are new to the channel, please like the video. Please subscribe to the page. We do talk Chicago sports daily on this channel. It's the only channel talking Chicago sports, how Chicago talks. So make sure that you get in tune with us, man. So Bears GM Ryan Poles has the perfect scenario for him to make decisions this year, right? The cap is literally at his disposal. He doesn't have a ton of dead cap decisions to make this year, doesn't have a ton of dead money on the cap that he's like, this guy's been here for a long time. Should we get rid of him? Is he going to be a big part of the culture with this team? Doesn't have a lot of those decisions at all to make. It literally is a fantasy football type lineup with $98 million in cap space to work with, the most in the NFL by far. But there are some major decisions about players on this team that I believe are going to be big decisions moving forward, right? Where you could cut this guy and it could be an advantage, but is it actually an advantage to the team that you're going to have, to the team that you currently have? And that's kind of where we start at, right? Let's jump straight into this. Appreciate you guys for showing love to the channel as always. Number one for me, and I'm just giving you the three biggest ones that stand out to me. Number one for me is Eddie Jackson, right? It seemed like going into year four of a big contract, one of the biggest contracts among safeties in the NFL, that Eddie Jackson was a foregone conclusion to be out of here, right? But then all of a sudden, Eddie Jackson turns himself back into a ball hawking safety under Coach Flus by the Chicago Bears, going out there and doing something very smart and going to get Jaquan Brisker. Jaquan Brisker made Eddie Jackson's life so much easier, to the point that all of a sudden he looked like the Eddie Jackson that we wanted to pay, that we lived to pay. He still has some issues, right? Like, I don't know what the aversion is to tackling on this team sometimes. Like, the Bears just sometimes be like, I don't really want to tackle. I'm okay with not tackling. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get that all the time, and I would love for us to figure that out. But at a minimum, right, Eddie Jackson absolutely turned himself back into the player that we all once loved. But the tough part here, and the part that makes this the toughest decision, is that Eddie Jackson is one of those players that does set the Bears up for a nice amount of cap savings in a couple of different ways, right? Right now, if they were to cut him, he'd save him about $7.52 million. And he would hit you with $9.57 million in dead money. Okay, we can withstand that. Is it really worth it in that situation, right? At that point, you're better off trying to hold on to Eddie Jackson, maybe getting some kind of new contract done. It is what it is. But here's the tough part, right? When you start talking about those two players that you can designate post-Jan 1 for those cuts, right? Eddie Jackson saves you $13 million, and he only hits you with $3.99 million in dead money. So now you have to ask yourself the question, is Eddie Jackson worth more than the cap savings? Now, those cap savings wouldn't take effect until after Jan 1. And there's a couple of players, right, that also, I believe, are going to be cap casualties, which we'll break down in another video, that I feel like you can also save a good chunk of money with, right? Like another player like that is Cody Whitehair. He'll hit you with about $4.2 million in dead money. He'll save you about 9.9, right? You know, so there's some players that you can finagle around there. Cairo Santos is actually another name. If you guys feel good about Cairo or not, that's up to you. But yeah, I think there's a couple of other names that the Bears can absolutely save a lot of money in dead cap with, and you could hold on to Eddie Jackson and feel just fine about it. But going in, saving an extra $13 million, having that at your disposal, possibly to pour into the offense. We do know that the Chicago Bears' focus is going to be on the offensive line in free agency, and they're going to have to overpay people. Like, there's no question about it. You're going to have to overpay people. So first decision right off the bat, very tough. Should the Chicago Bears keep Eddie Jackson? Should they designate him for one of those post-Jan 1 cuts. It seems like Flus loves the guy. It seems like the defense loves the guy. I love the energy we saw Eddie Jackson having before he went down with injury. It's a tough cut, man. That's a tough cut to me. I think there's some guys that I would make cuts on first before I cut Eddie Jackson. Lucas Patrick is one guy that could be a cap casualty. Al-Qadiq Muhammad is a guy that could be a cap casualty. Now, they don't save you much post-Jan 1, but pre-Jan 1, you could make some of those cuts and save a good chunk of change there. So I probably would lean doing some things towards that over anything. I just feel like you finally got back to Eddie Jackson being the safety you hoped he would be. I'm not saying you go back into this and make him one of the highest paid safeties in the NFL. I guess the contract situation itself also plays a ton into this, but the fact that Eddie Jackson can come out and stand next to Jaquan Brisker and they can be that balancing board for each other. I feel like that's something that the Chicago Bears have not had in a long time. We haven't had a strong safety duo in a long, long time, going back to probably Mike Brown being back there. So I don't think you want to give that up on your defensive end. It's actually a position that I have no qualms about on the team. So let me know how you guys feel, man, in the comments below. I'll be down there talking with you as well. We got a couple of more to get to here, so don't want to spend too much time on each one, but Eddie Jackson's a tough one for me. If we're going to cut Eddie Jackson, I got some question marks. You know what I mean? I got some questions. Next up on the list, another toughie, another name that I think Bears fans really, really believe in, really love, and rightfully so, right? He has been a bread and butter player for us year over year. He has been a player that, in my mind, deserves a contract extension based on all the things that he does and the fact that you don't have somebody to come in and fill his need exactly with what he does right now. And I don't know if that player is out there in free agency right now. Y'all let me know if there's a name you guys are looking at. That player for me is David Montgomery. It's tough, right? Because my stance on running backs has not changed. I do not believe that you overpay for running backs. I do not believe that you go out there and you give running backs big money deals. But I also look at what David Montgomery does on the field, and I realize there's nobody else on this team that does that. While I believe that the Bears will go out and address the offensive line this year, there's nobody in the backfield that, if you're going to run some type of play that maybe takes a little bit longer, blocks as well as David Montgomery on this team. In fact, David Montgomery is one of the top blockers from the running back position in the NFL. And I know that's just saying, oh, Pat, you're talking about a guy that's blocking, right? Yeah, that plays in a lot, right? Also, the fact that he's going to be running the football as well. He's a hard runner. He does find his way into the end zone. He operates really well with Justin Fields. The biggest problem with all of this, it's all positives for David Montgomery. I just don't believe that you go out there and give guys big money contracts, and the kind of contract that he could be seeking right now. It's being rumored a 3-year, $19 million contract with $14 million guaranteed. That is a lot of money to a running back, in my opinion. I know everybody's going to be like, Pat, that's not that much money, and we have the money to give. Yes, we do have the money to give, but I would like to give that money to a premier position. I would like to give that money towards left tackle. I would like to give that money towards a starting center. I would like to give that money towards defensive linemen. I'm not in the business of paying running backs big money. This is why this is such a tough decision, because it doesn't seem like Ryan Poles is in that business either. Now, at the end of the day, what you'll probably see him do is go back into this draft, even though he did just draft a young running back in Treston Ebner, and say, hey, listen, we're going to go into this draft and we're going to find us another running back that does things very similar to what David Montgomery does. We're going to let David Montgomery walk. That's going to be the part that does hurt. He's going to go out and he's going to be able to make plays with another team, and he's going to be good, and somebody's going to pay him $19 million over 3 years. It's not going to be the Chicago Bears. I feel like that's the direction we will be heading. But it's tough because I know all the things that Monty does well. I know all the things that Monty has an ability to do for the Bears. I know how he is an asset to this team, but 19 million to a running back with 14 million guaranteed. That's a lot of money tied up in a position that, if we're being realistic, right, if you don't find it in the draft this year, you probably find it in the draft next year and or the year. Like, you're going to find this guy again. This guy exists somewhere. That is the toughest part about this. Are you going to pay for a 3-year deal on something that you're going to find again? Now, what you won't be able to find again in a guy that you bring in the draft is the respect that Monty garners. Monty is a leader on this team. Monty is a leader on this offense. Monty is somebody that the players do look to as a guy that can be a fixed point on this team. That is something that if you feel like he's worth it to you overall that much, right? If he's worth it to you as a leader in this locker room that much, that's something that I'm very willing to pay for. If you feel like that's the guy that the players on the offensive side of the ball are going to look at and they're going to say, okay, as long as him and Justin are good, we can all go out here and we can make something happen. That's the part where I'm willing to pay for. Leadership is something that you can't often put a price on, right? But just as far as the position goes, just as far as it's tough. I love Monty, but I can't do paying running backs that much money, dog. I just can't. Go find somebody in the draft that's going to make like $700,000 and do the same thing talent wise, man. So that's the toughest decision, I think, on the books right now, out of all of the decisions, but definitely a big one coming up, man. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments below, man. Hey, if you're new to the channel, appreciate you for showing love and rocking with us, man. Hey, tune in with the channel, hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Welcome to the channel, man. Appreciate you making it this far into the video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, man. Let's get to this final one, man, because this is the biggest one. I do want to know how you guys feel as well. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think about the first two? Should the Bears pay Monty? Should the Bears not, or should the Bears cut Eddie Jackson and save that money in the cap? That could be Monty's money, essentially, right? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be down there talking with you guys as well. The final decision that I think is a huge one for the Chicago Bears going into this offseason is going to be, what do we do with Cole Kmet? Cole Kmet coming up on his final, or on his second contract. And you kind of have to make a decision on this guy, a guy who was a very nice safety blanket for Justin Fields this year, a guy who was able to come out and make plays that we didn't think we were going to see him be able to make, right? He turned himself into a tight end that many of us didn't believe he had the ability to be the first 3 years of his career. All of a sudden, year 4, right, boom, he's out here making plays. He's catching touchdowns. The yards did go down, but I mean, the Bears weren't throwing the ball basically the first 6 weeks of the season. So it's understandable that the yards did go down, right? But the touchdowns went up. And that's the biggest thing. Cole Kmet finally turning himself into that big body threat in the end zone that we've been hoping that he could be. Right now, it's looking like the contract that he would get, which is why this makes it a tough decision, would be somewhere between Mark Andrews and Dawson Knox, right? So probably something like a 4-year deal worth $54 million. And they're talking about with 35 guarantees per The Athletic, 35 million in guarantees per The Athletic. These are the contract numbers that are being suggested around him. That would put him at top 5 in his position pay wise, right? Like, that makes a big difference. Do you feel like Cole Kmet should be paid as top 5 in his position? I think you have to factor in a couple of things. One, he's only 23 years old, so you're still getting the best of him at this, right? And if you feel like he's actually turning the corner, yeah, he's 23, or yes, he'd be top 5 at his position. That won't be the case by the end of this contract, more than likely, right? Like, there'll be guys that are getting paid, but can you go out there with the youth, working with Justin Fields, the fact that he's got this safety blanket, he's got this relationship built up, and you know that he's going to go out there with a nice rapport with Cole Kmet. He's going out there, okay, now let's continue to grow. Let's continue to build on what we're doing. Let's continue to keep making plays. Now we're actually throwing the football in the offense. We're not just sitting here running the ball every single play. Now that we're throwing the football, how are you going to be able to make, how are you going to be able to benefit from that? Do the yards go up in that situation then, and the touchdowns sustain? These are questions that I think you have to look at with Cole Kmet. The other thing I think you also have to pay attention to is, hey, you going to upgrade the position this offseason? Is there somebody out there that's going to give you better than Cole Kmet right now? Is there somebody you're looking at that you feel like, oh man, we have to be? And if I have the position there, why create a hole that is unnecessary, right? Again, I'm in the business of spending the money wisely for the Chicago Bears. I'm not in the business of just going out there and throwing money away willy-nilly. But if you feel like there's an upgrade that you can get, if you feel like there's a piece you can get back that you could trade for, right? And you get a nice tight end back, that'd be a weird piece to get back out of all the pieces you could get back. But I feel like, okay, then maybe we can have the conversation. But right now, right, Cole Kmet, is he worth the money overall, top 5 at his position? No, he's not. I'm not. There's no question about that. He's not a top 5 tight end in this NFL. But the question is, with how young he is, with how much he can grow with Justin Fields, with how much we've seen him grow in 1 year with Justin Fields, will he be able to take that next step? That's the question you have to ask yourself. That's the part that I feel like I can lean on and feel a little bit more comfortable. And again, why create a hole at a position of need when we have so many holes on this team? We still have questions at the wide receiver position. There's so many players I didn't name. I just said these are my 3 biggest, right? And Darnell Mooney's a question. Jalen Johnson's a question. These are guys that are all up for paper, right? Like, and so you have to kind of go into this and try and figure out who's going to be the best, who's going to give you the most bang for your buck. And I think you already know Cole Kmet can go out there and give you that production. So it's going to be tough for me to say no to Cole Kmet. This is probably the contract that I'm most willing to give, which means I'm probably saying goodbye to one of the 3. In my case, it is Monty, unfortunately. I think you go out and get a young guy, but let me know which one of the 3 would you let go of going into this free agency class. There's a lot of things the Bears can do with a lot of the cap that they have. I'll be down in the comments talking with you as well. Should Cole Kmet be top 5 paid tight end in this NFL? Let me know in the comments below. As always, man, it's your boy Pat the Designer, back at it again to continue watching our Chicago Bears content. Click the links on the screen or check the links in the description below. Hey, yo, Chicago, get ready for a fun offseason, man. Y'all stay safe out there. Peace.